victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Penisini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Tuesday live stream for the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to break down another week of happenings for the Parramatta Eels and the wider NRL. It's my good mate, Sixties, also known as Craig. Big fella. Not many wins on the weekend, just the New South Wales Cup prevailing, but there is still plenty to talk about. Jason Ryles really taking that tact against the wind right now, isn't he? He's being bold, certainly of his team selection decisions. And beyond that, we got some beef with the MRC. And I'll get to that shortly, but as always, checking on how you doing, mate.
Well, look, another tough day at the hospital, mate, but football needs to be my respite, but it's actually something that's left me highly pissed off after the weekend, and it's just been building and building all season.
The last month of football in particular, with the Eels getting absolutely reamed by a series of decisions. And look, the Kelma Tuilagi tackle and the Will Penisini tackles had merits to their suspensions, but the duration compared to what we're seeing elsewhere, in particular what happened to Kitione Kautoga, yeah, well, let's put that on the back burner for the time being, because got to do our introductions. Like you said, mate, been a tough day, so we are pulling for you. I'll do the usual welcomes and intros with thanks to obviously our sponsors and star partners, Real Estate, Auburn Rail and Parramatta, and of course Parramatta Leagues, home of the Parramatta Eels. Both have been fantastic partners for TCT and the Tip Sheet. Speaking of PLC, as you've been plugging for the last couple of weeks, Craig, of course, if you want to have a catch-up with us and watch that Brisbane game next week, not this weekend coming, but the weekend after, Eels are taking on the Broncos as the away game. We are hosting a watch party at Sterlo's, so make sure to get there and have a chance to hang out with us, watch some football, crack a few jokes and talk some footy, and have a free food, cheap beers, the $5 house beers, and some giveaways, absolutely. And then to everyone watching and listening, as always, that like and subscribe goes a long way. And to everyone that's been backing us on Patreon, and we know there's been a recent uptick in the last couple of weeks, massive thank you. And I'm going to get to a Patreon plug-in page at the back end of the podcast very soon, as well as those tiers that we keep talking about. But yeah, massive thank you to everyone that is supporting us on and off the field, on and off the podcast. It goes a long, long way.
It absolutely does. And if you can also give a like and subscribe, no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on, and especially with YouTube, if you can hit the subscribe button with that, because we want to really push towards 1,000 subscribers, and we're getting there, but it really helps if you are watching it, and we know we've been getting the views up there. So that would really help us. But John, I think it's about time for the stingers.
It's going to be yeah, exactly, stingers this week. So let's get right into it.
Yep.
News team, assemble!
Making sure I got all my prompts ready to go, mate. And we did not make any attempt to hide what we're leading off with tonight. The match review committee, Craig. And it's not just the match review committee, it's the on-field officials. We had our whinge about them in the instant reaction. But certainly Peter Goff and Grant Atkins played their part in the Izack Tago or Kitione Kautoga incident not being correctly adjudicated in the 80 minutes of football that preceded this MRC decision. But we were both fuming. Independently, we actually hadn't spoke to each other about this prior to a very quick phone call, which was essentially our green room today, where we said, yeah, independently, we were both really upset about what has happened. Izack Tago, one game suspension for rubbing out.
Have you got the stinger, John? Have you got the stinger?
I got this one here, yeah. John McEnroe, my spirit animal right here.
You cannot be serious.
Yeah, you've got to be kidding me. You cannot be serious. 1 week suspension for rubbing out a player for 2 months, at least 2 months, with a syndesmosis injury in a year where the NRL has put out a mandate that the hip drop tackle needs to be eliminated from the game. But as always, when you say don't call it a crackdown, it lasts for 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks if you're getting real feisty with it in the NRL's case, and then it completely evaporates into the ether, especially when there are big teams involved. And Penrith, the 4-time reigning premiers, well, they're as big as they get right now, and they certainly get a far more, I suppose, beneficial. I'm trying to do it without being too coarse, but yeah, they get a much
they dealt a softer hand,
yeah,
John.
There's a lot more silk used rather than steel when it comes to the MRC for Penrith players.
John, first of all, I received a text message after the decision came out from our mate Derek, and I'll just quote what he says. 8 weeks for Tonga, well, that's the season. Slap with a feather for Tungor, and the officials sit back with no consequence. That's the other side of it. The officials miss the whole bloody thing, and they sit back with no consequences. And the MRC just shrug their shoulders. Enough. We've had enough. Right? As Eels supporters, we can carry on all we like about this. The club might be able to say anything, but we can. After the match on the weekend, John, you and I rightly took the stance that the Eels had to look in the mirror for why they lost the game, because they made far too many errors. It was low percentage football that was played, and let's face it, even after mistakes were made by the officials, the Eels had the chance to shut it down. However, those mistakes by officials were match determining in other respects, because they changed momentum. And there's a term called, there's a very commonly used terminology of the turning point, especially when it comes to sport. The turning point in this game was that hip drop tackle that was made on Kitione Kautoga. Let's break this down. First of all, Gideon was the most dangerous player on the field for the Eels in that first half.
There's no argument about that. He was carving Penrith up, yeah.
Yeah, he was beating the first defender with every possession that he had. He charged onto that ball, and you could see from how he was tackled that something was amiss. The way he went down, that something was amiss, which is, so you basically saw his back almost arch back because his legs have been crumpled in an awkward way underneath him. That should have been the first signal. Let's have a look at it. He can't play the ball immediately. So you've already had the on-field official who's missed it. And you go, well, okay, sometimes that might happen. You've then got the bloke in the bunker who's got all the time in the world and can so often come up with seeing something that isn't seen by match officials or even everyone in the stadium. But on this occasion, something as blatant as that was also missed. What then happens is you have the Eels play out that set. I think from memory, we might have gone for a long distance field goal at the end of that set. Anyway, at that point, a penalty in front is a 12-6 because the Eels would have taken the penalty from in front.
Penrith, of course, go on to score.
Yep. And I mean, we can talk about the errors that were missed then and following that.
Izack Tago is arguably sent off. I mean, at what point is this a send-off and not a sin bin if you're going to have a player rubbed out for 2 months?
Well, at the very least, he's in the sin bin because it was an outrageously bad hip drop, right? It's resulted in a bloke season being over. You can't get any worse than that. So he could have been in the bin. There's 10 minutes without a player, which is 10 minutes probably mostly at the start of the second half. Then you're talking about after that, on the back of it, they go downfield, they get a 6 again call that wasn't a 6 again call. I think you had a player stepping over the top of the ball and play the ball that was outrageous. So you go bang, 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 1, 2, 3, match changing calls, one after the other.
Yep.
It's not, there's no 50-50 in this. they're blatantly wrong calls or missed calls. They're wrong. They're wrong. And why are they wrong? Look, you're going to miss calls every now and again.
We talk about it all the
Panthers
time at the speed of the game.
The Panthers are specials, absolute specials for stepping over the top of the ball
the
and
garbage
not playing
in the
ball.
ruck. Yeah,
they're not the only ones that do it, but they're absolute specials. If it's on a referee's tip sheet, John, if it's on a referee's tip sheet, it'd be there about the Panthers.
And yet Josh Adokar was the sole player.
Josh Adokar gets it. Okay, now that should be a sign. That should be a sign. Hang on, I'm picking him up. There's going to be more to come. No.
In that chaotic sequence that went
notorious.
Kitione Kautoga having the hip drop missed into a phantom 6 again call for Penrith, into Isaiah Papali'i maybe knocking on. We never got to see coverage on it. They never showed a replay. And Matt Eisenhuth just walking over the ball. Literally the same half that they penalised Josh Adokar for the same instance. And we're meant to sit here as fans and cop it on the chin. There is a breaking point. And like you said, you sit here and this does not absolve the team of the issues that they had in their own backyard. But just as how we are holding the Eels to a higher standard, so too the officials need to be held to a higher standard. Because these aren't the excusable errors. These are fundamental breakdowns. Like why do we have a bunker if in other games, I know Warriors fans in particular arced up about this as a third party because a former Eel, Marata Niokore, has been pulled up by the bunker many times this year and put in the bin multiple sets later due to bunker interference for foul play, where it was a hip drop or a high tackle. And yet the bunker was whisper quiet for us against Penrith. Now,
let's throw into this, right? And this is, Mitch tweeted this off our X account. So Kautoga's out for the season after Tungall's hip drop. Tungal gets 1 week, which is the same number of games as Dylan Brown gets when Sutton
ran into
breaks
him.
back into it.
Exactly.
Right? So Sutton is actually running an interference on behalf of the defence as Dylan Brown's on a kick chase. Dylan Brown cops a 1 week suspension. Meanwhile, Ryley Smith, Kelma Tuilagi and Will Penisini are yet to return from tackles that hurt nobody. Now, should they have been suspended? Well, we weren't arguing with the suspensions that happened there, but let's use the pub test. Let's use the common sense.
If you're going to give Ryley Smith 2 weeks what he did, then Izack Tago.
John, I'm losing my mind here because how do you have a situation? I know they got their gradings, but how do you have a situation where someone that puts a person out for the season with an illegal tackle,
a tackle that has been specifically cited by the NRL, something it wants to stamp out this year?
Yep. And 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. Now, I'm being careful not to swear. You know, I can control myself on the podcast, but you know that I don't mind dropping an expletive or two away from the podcast. I'm being very careful that I'm not
sailing very close to the wind tonight.
Because I actually appreciate the fact that people of all ages can watch our podcast without parents being concerned about the language that we might use. I'm doing everything in my power to.
The NRL are testing us, mate. The NRL are testing us, and
no. Look, as I said, the thing is with all of this. And I should also acknowledge that we're not on our own when it comes to these sorts of tackles going unpunished, because I think I was dropped a line by our good mate AJ at the league scene, who said that the Roosters have also lost 3 players to injury for illegal tackles that were missed for a penalty. And wait for it, John. One of them just happened to be a hip drop by a Penrith player.
I mean, not so much to dispel the idea of a protected species. You know?
Yep, it was Butcher that was put out by Mitch Kenny.
Well, speaking of Mitch Kenny, he had a hip drop on Josh Adokar that was picked up after the fact, so he didn't get a penalty. Also not cited by the MRC. So, again, not doing much to dispel the idea that Penrith have a different degree of standard from the MRC to the Parramatta Eels, and maybe the Parramatta Eels to most other clubs. because the Eels have 9 weeks we've lost between Dylan Brown, Ryley Smith, Will Penisini and Kelma Tuilagi in the last 3 games of football. And then you throw in another 8 weeks plus for Kitione Kautoga on the other side of the ledger. Like, I again, this comes back to me being a little bit selfish. I wanted the coach to lash out. Maybe he didn't understand the full extent of Kitione's injury post game. But when you got the stupid press asking him how much he's impressed by Penrith, and he actually gave a great response to that, saying he doesn't give a rat's about Penrith and how they're doing.
Yeah,
like surely he's getting close to his breaking point dealing with this rubbish too. Because
welcome to Parramatta.
Well,
Jason
yeah,
Wright.
what a welcome to Parramatta year, isn't it? The injury curse, the suspensions, the MRC garbage. And to his credit, he's doing great work. I mean, you can see his vision and the ideas that he has been implemented across the club. But God, welcome to Parramatta indeed.
We're trying to speak on behalf of Eels supporters here because the club can't say anything or don't want to say anything. I can understand why a coach and a club don't want to do this because they don't want to throw up excuses for games, and we're not offering excuses for games because our first comment was the Eels need to look in the mirror for why they lost this game and why they've lost some other games. However, and I'll be interested in the response from chat here, John. Are we out of our minds in thinking that this has reached the ridiculous point where you have to start asking questions like, what the hell is going on? Is the whole system broken?
Burn it to the ground, yeah.
Is it an example that Parramatta and maybe a couple of other clubs are treated vastly differently to some other clubs? Because it smells like that to us. It absolutely smells like it. I've had enough of this, John. It's garbage. We sit there and we watch the garbage every week. The match that we just watched on the weekend, that was one of the poorest officiated matches I've ever seen because just about everything in that match screamed of a referee that was finding fault with one team and not the other. Now, sometimes this can happen in a game where it feels like the bounce of the ball or every 50-50 call goes one way. There were some obvious things, this being an example, that hip drop being an example. But we watched all game while their Penrith markers were caught offside. No, they actually weren't caught offside.
They were caught offside and weren't caught offside. Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
The Parramatta players were catching them out, but Peter Goff had no interest in calling a penalty against them. And then later on, and again, I'm not saying that Parramatta should not be penalised. That has never been our argument because our markers got caught out after and they were correctly penalised. I think Dylan Brown, when he came back on, was one of them. And then there was a couple, I think Jermaine Hopgood had a bad one as well. But again, penalise Parramatta when they're wrong. Penalise Penrith when they're wrong. How hard is it? Like, you don't, if you're trying to beat allegations of, match fixing is the wrong word, but like bias, right? Like it's not like they're out here to inherently fix a match, but they are treating teams differently. And it is incredibly frustrating. Not just when you watch Parramatta games, but when you watch the neutral games and you can see the inequity of the clubs that are deemed to be haves versus the clubs that are deemed to be have-nots and how the officials treat them.
Maybe, look, I don't want to use the word bias. What I'm going to talk about is something that coaches have brought up before, which is preconceived ideas. So referees may go into games with preconceived ideas. This team's a highly disciplined team. They wouldn't do this. This team's not so disciplined. They'll probably do that. This is in spite of some evidence that we've already talked about with things like the incorrect play the balls that happen. And as I said, it's right across the NRL. But Penrith are past masters at getting a really fast play the ball and just stepping over. It's been shown time and again on social media, on media, that this is something that they've done. But what we see as well is, and this is something we've actually pointed out over the years. It's one thing to be correctly adjudicated against, as you said, penalise. There's no complaints about penalties against us that are rightly awarded. Where it becomes frustrating is where you see the opposing team committing the same offence or maybe other types of offences, and nothing is picked up. And what they tend to do is you start to see at the beginning of a game, a team will test what's the referee going to pull up today. And when the referee doesn't blow the whistle, they start doing it more and more. They just wait until that penalty is blown, or the referee starts saying that they're going to blow a penalty. And then they'll keep doing it until there's a consequence for it. If there's no consequence, well, happy days, keep going for it. Yep. As I said, I don't think we're overreacting because I've reached breaking point now at this point in the season. What's Chad have to say, John?
Yeah, largely in solidarity of us here. A lot of people sort of feeling that the club need to invest in that fund for Jason Ryley to be able to maybe lash out in an official capacity post-game. People asking us if we have contacts to the club and how the club feels. Look, we've been quite candid in the past with Brad Arthur's relationship with the NRL, Craig. We've talked about how the club has gone through the right channels and the right processes with their venting and frustrations on poor games from the officials. And they've had feedback coming back saying, no, you guys are absolutely correct. We were wrong here, missed call there. You're correct in feeling aggrieved here, and nothing changes. So, yes, I do feel that, and this is something I've articulated in the past, obviously, that at some point the club do need to empower their coach. Could have empowered Brad Arthur in the past. Maybe he was against it. And Jason Ryley maybe feeling like as a rookie coach, he doesn't want to set, as you said, Craig, at a standard that excuses are okay. But it's a delicate balancing act, isn't it, where you don't want your players to start buying into the excuse the officials are holding us back. But at the same time,
can't. That's the thing. We can say this, John. We don't want the players to say it. We want the players to steer well away from this, because once they start looking for excuses, then they're not looking at their own form to turn games around. And to an extent, we don't want the coaches like looking at it every single time that it happens, because
when you start micro analyzing the decisions and how they impact the game, and it's so easy to gloss over the calls that went your way as well. Maybe there was a missed forward pass call or a missed knock on call against you. You got away with a high shot. Those things add up on the other side of the column too. But when there's a particularly egregious instance like this, where a player is being ruled out for the season and the offending player gets nothing in game or post game, he got nothing post game. One game is nothing. Especially for Penrith, who are already resting. By the way, resting Cleary and Yo this week. Thanks very much.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah. Doing us a real solid there. The club has to find a way to do something. Whether it is Ryles having the official blow up in a post-match presser, whether it is getting a line to someone in the media, whether it's Chamis, Prashenko, someone from the Daily Telegraph, and really starting to put pressure on the NRL, I don't know. They need.
I think there was something, John. There was something I think in the presser where they asked him whether he was unhappy about something, and he basically indicated that he was unhappy, but it wasn't pursued.
There was a game, another poor game we officiated earlier this year, where one that I blew up on. I think when he was walking out, Ryles muttered to someone off the side of the camera saying, "No questions about the officiating," which again it's a complex problem, because you have the media here have the ability to put the pressure, and they do put the pressure on for certain clubs. If their best mate, mate Ricky Stewart in Canberra have a bad game, they're there like white knights in shining armour to rally around Ricky.
Well, they also know there's a headline around the presser.
Yeah.
If they can get him triggered with that as well, and they know that he's got that history with it. But like you say, there is always a narrative that they are looking for to get reactions from certain fan bases, and in this instance, it's basically gone untouched. Like the garbage that we saw on the weekend has gone untouched.
Yep.
And for the life of me, it's got me to breaking point as a supporter in this regard. And as I said, I don't want the players thinking about it. I don't even want the coaches thinking about it past that moment in the press conference. But damn, I'm going to say something about it. I hope other fans continue saying something about it, because this just isn't good enough. And what we've been dished up by the MRC this year Now, you want to talk about different standards that people are being held to and different outcomes and consequences for it. You've got it here now. How does it pass a pub test? How does it pass what is, and I know that the rugby league laws, rules regarding suspension and the charges and things like that don't align in any way with a court of law or what have you. But if you have an illegal action in a court of law, the consequence comes into it. The damage that you do to someone else comes into it. Mm-hmm. And if you've got an illegal tackle, like a hip drop, the one, as you say, that they want stamped out of the game, and it puts a player out for the season, how are you facing a charge which puts you out for 1 week?
And that's the problem too, is that inconsistency where in a vacuum they tell you that injuries don't come into consideration for the grading. Yet if you go through MRC charges, I'm sure you can find relatively, not innocuous, but moderate incidents that were given higher gradings because injury was involved when it deems the narrative to be correct. Whereas here, in this case, Parramatta, Kitione Kautoga are obviously not important enough. And that's the other side of the ledger. We did mention it, but we haven't really broken it down, Craig. Kautoga, in the throes of a genuine breakout run, like the young man that had truly solidified himself through some really tough early season struggles, to the point that fans wanted him to be dropped to reserve grade, had found himself with a turnstile amount of halves next to him. You know, we've had Dylan Brown in and out of the team because of suspension, being bounced around the field because of Mitchell Moses' injuries. Dean Hawkins there, Ronald Volkman around him as well at one point, or at least in the team, sorry. There's been, and now Josh Papali next to him, and he's been shining for out, has his season cut short, and there's no doubt he's still going to be a factor for next year. It's syndesmosis, it's not the end of the world, but it is so terrible to see a young man who is having a legitimate breakout campaign have his season rubbed 2 months short. It is, as a fan, it sucks. And I can only imagine as a player how frustrating it would be to be on the cusp of really establishing yourself as a plus NRL player.
Yeah, John, I was angry about the lack of consequence for Tangor in making that tackle. In reality, that doesn't, even if he was suspended for 8 weeks, that does nothing to benefit Parramatta, because it only benefits teams that the Panthers face down the track. I'm angry because in contrast to that, you've got Parramatta players that are suspended for multiple weeks for incidents where there is no ongoing injury as a result of their action. Now, we're not arguing with the fact that they're suspended, but the fact that we did with the Dylan Brown, and we did with also with Ryley Smith, because those were absurd suspensions. But you've raised the right point now as well, that action, that illegal tackle, it had the impact on the game, because it took out someone that was causing their defence all sorts of problems. It swung the momentum of the game as well, because it turned what should have been probably a 6-point lead at halftime into the potential for a 2-point deficit, which it actually transpired into being. It then has taken Kitione Kautoga out of the Eels team for the rest of the season. So it's got an impact on our team. It's got an impact on him personally. And for all of this, there is no other match officials having to answer for how they missed it. How did they miss it, John? Because at the ground,
how can you even rationalise that? The entire crowd jumped on it. Everyone at home saw it. Everyone that was a neutral saw it. And yet, somehow the two most important people in Peter Goff and Grant Atkins did not see it. And
their sideline officials obviously didn't see it. The fact that it could be looked at as well and was completely missed. How? Yeah. Where are we getting an explanation for how this was missed?
Well, the NRL's obviously shut up shop on the Graham Annesley Monday afternoon debriefs because they were copying too much scrutiny, I guess. and it's a shame because that was the only real place that we were seeing consistent, like I said, scrutiny or at least pressure being placed on Annesley and that portion of the NRL, that governing body for the officials. Because right now they're now a law unto no one, but they're, I suppose, the commissioners, right? They operate
John,
just by the commissioners.
Peter Goff has become a name that we don't want listed as a match official on any day. We got about a 30% win record under him. There is something that he doesn't like about the way that we play football. So whatever it is, our style of football, he is not. We do things that obviously he can find fault with, and it's there in that win-loss record. And again, well, maybe we just take all the blame for all the losses that happen under his officiating. But what was missed on the weekend was atrocious.
No, it's inexcusable, and it shows that the system is fundamentally broken, or maybe it's fundamentally broken for certain clubs. I don't know how Penrith feel because they seem to get a lot of those good calls going their way, especially against Parramatta. I can think back to an important final game back in 2021. Was it 2021, 2022, 2020? Jerome Luai taking Mitchell Moses out of the ball. That was missed.
Yeah, don't start me, because that again, it defied logic. Different referees, but it defied logic. How was it missed? How was it missed by the on-field official for a start when everyone in the crowd saw it happen?
Yeah.
Anyone watching the coverage saw it happen.
The system is just broken.
And like the bunker sees nothing. The bunker was finding people guilty of interference who were just given a little tug on the jersey.
Yeah, and they found a way to overturn a Penrith knock-on that led to a Parramatta try when the ball went laterally sideways, which is 99% of the time a knock-on in that game, but they couldn't see that. Like they've got the finest of margins to find a beneficial call for Penrith in another capacity, but can't find a blatant hip drop tackle that should have been, I argue, a send-off, but at least a sin bin. And
John, I hate to, I hate to be a referee basher. Look, I honestly do, because I've seen the preparation, the physical preparation that referees go through. They are athletes.
Phenomenal. They are phenomenal athletes, Craig. You're right.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The dedication that goes into what they do. And we know that people aren't perfect. They're going to make mistakes during games. Look, maybe there are other supporters of other clubs that might feel similarly about when they get officiated by Peter Goff. Maybe he's a referee that just misses a lot of things in a game. We haven't seen too much that benefits us, but maybe he's a referee that misses a lot of things in games. We've had Ashley Klein come under the media scrutiny for missing things in games and for the standard of his refereeing performances. And we've taken issue with him in the past. We've taken issue with Grant Atkins and some of the tough calls that he makes against the Eels. Maybe we're just adding Peter Goff to that list because, as I said, now when I see his name,
I just I cringe when I see the team sheet and he's the official that's been assigned to Parramatta. Nearly 30 games of evidence now, which statistically in general data is a very small sample size, but in the context of NRL referees, it's actually one of the larger ones you're going to get in the modern pool of refs. That is not good. Sub 33% win rate, and like you said, a fair portion of that can be attributed to the Parramatta Eels, their own issues, their own struggles. But goodness, when you see what you see on the weekend, and that's not the only game where we've had gripes about Peter Goff's officiating style being oil and water of the Parramatta Eels. Yeah, I don't know. But then again, he's not the only ref. He's not the only ref. That's terrible. It's
okay. Then we've probably spent.
We're going probably over budget there. So let's power on. We mentioned Gideon.
Are there any other comments that our chat wants to throw in with this?
Well, rugby league history was very quick on the trigger pull there to point out another call from the 2021 elimination final. There was a sequence where we were on the attack and the referee called playback for a random reason that allowed Penrith to reset, and get the defensive line back in place and stop a potential try. So good memory there, ROH. I was in chat talking about, someone said that maybe our players need to start staying down and milking a little bit more. And I pointed out that Matt Dury actually did that in that same game. He stayed down for what was a clear high shot that was missed. And then Andrew Voss instantly, you talk about quick trigger fingers, I think Voss has got rugby league history covered in that one, was laying into to Dury about being a milker and how this isn't soccer and whatnot. You can't win. We lose a player for 2 months because of our player who tried to play through and didn't get the call, which was so obvious should have been a call regardless of him staying down. Matt Dury stays down for a high shot that was missed, and suddenly he's milking and simulating. So it is a frustrating duality you have trying to balance against here, because commentators like Voss, who is obviously super high up in the tiers of and hierarchy of commentating, they have massive influence on the game, and I think that they get too bombastic at times, and it drives a lot of the narratives and fan perception about these sort of things. And
well, he is influential. He got the corner post rule changed.
True.
As a commentator, he drove that change. So he actually has a place in rugby league history in that regard. I can't think of too many other commentators, if any, that have been responsible for a rule change. Can you? So if he's pulling out comments like that where he is an influential figure, you're going to get a certain number of people out there that are like, oh yeah, he's right.
And don't get me started on the carry-on about Dylan Brown on the weekend, mate. I don't know if you've seen the replay yet. My goodness. If we get Voss and Ennis on Saturday at 3 o'clock, which I talked about in the team list post, I'm pretty comfortable we won't, because they get primetime slots because they are, the A team for Fox. The fact that Dylan Brown, spoilers, is 18th man for the team list, my goodness. They would not actually talk about the game. They just talk about Dylan Brown. It was so bad for Dylan Brown playing dummy half. Like me and you had a good rugged debate in the postgame about Dylan Brown playing dummy half. They were losing their minds about Dylan Brown playing dummy half. It was rough listening on TV. So on that note, I guess we'll move on to the team list, because we do have a bit more stuff to cover, and we're 38 minutes deep into the show. But yeah, we got 5 teams to cover this week, as always: NRL, NRLW, New South Wales Cup, Harvard Women's Premiership, and the Jersey Flag. And I do have team lists for all 5 grades. Let me just check my team sheet post. I think I updated it, because we had late announcements for the HNWP and the Jersey Flag, but we do have team sheets. Let's start from the top. In the NRL, Parramatta Eels on the road as part of a 4-game spread against the Canberra Raiders, I believe it is. Yeah, because the Harvey Normans are taking on Mounties. So Eels against the Raiders in 4 grades here. 3 o'clock kickoff I mentioned earlier. This one's at GIO Stadium. We'll do the preview later on this week, so just the team list as always. Eels look like this: Isaiah Yongi at fullback, Zach Lomax and Josh Adokar on the wings. Bailey Simonson, who had a great game against the Panthers, will be in the right centre position. Sean Russell on the left. Still waiting Will Penisini to come back next week, Craig. That's when the backline gets really interesting. I say that assuming that there's not going to be injuries or suspensions.
Oh, there will be.
Because
there will be.
I was in chat talking to, I think it was Shano was there early on, and I was saying I dared to dream that next week we might have an almost full-strength roster with Mitchell Moses and Will Penisini maybe back, and then Kelma obviously the week after. But we lose Gideon, so there you go. But in the halves, true to his word, the future is now Joash Papali installed as the first choice 5'8" officially, with the 6 on his back. He'll partner Dean Hawkins in the halves. Jermaine Hopgood in the front row. This is something I've been banging the table for, Craig. He gets to start alongside Junior Barlaw. Ryley Smith returns to start at dummy half. Charlie Guyman, who did a really solid job on the edges last week, reprises his role there, while Jack Williams is out on the edge as well. I would assume, and this is an assumption, but based on the fact that Charlie played on the right last week, that Jack would be playing left. But there could be a swap there as well. Both are probably capable of swapping sides there. But I would look at Jack Williams as that left edge back rower, replacing the injured Kautoga. Dylan Walker will start at lock 4 for the second week running. Then on the interchange, Talon De Silva heads the rotation with the 14 on his back. Jordan Samrani back into NRL action after being dropped to reserve grade last week. He's joined by Matt Dury and Sam Tuilagi in a very young bench there. So young Eels across the park there, but especially on the interchange rotation. Extended roster, the big one, Dylan Brown is the 18th man. Look for the Mildred to milk the shit out of this one, Craig. There's going to be articles from here to next Saturday, I'd say, with Dan Keir, Tony Mattielli, Ronald Volkman, and Hayes Dunster. Good to see Hayes there. Rounding out the rest of the extended roster. Canberra, for their part, very strong team, Craig, and we'll talk about that later this week. But, yeah, geez, they've got... Suddenly that team looks far more formidable than it used to. A lot of players in very good form across that back line and forward pack. They've unearthed a very handy dummy half in Owen Paddy, which makes it all the more bizarre that they would go out and chase Jaden Brayley. I don't really understand why they would go and splash the cash on another frontline dummy half, but there you go. And then also worth noting, a number of players on their extended reserve list, Craig, that aren't named in New South Wales Cup. Players like Chevy Stewart, Trey Mooney, Noah Martin, who will probably drop back to that grade because they are not named there currently.
Same as Dylan Brown wasn't named in New South Wales.
Yeah, Dylan Brown not named anywhere, and there could be obviously something to change there, whether he just plays 18th man. Wouldn't be the first time this year that we've carried just a pure 18th man that didn't turn out in another grade, but you would imagine with Dylan, something's going to give one way or the other.
Yeah. John, I said last week I'm not a fan of it. I'm a fan of Joash Papali, but I'm also a fan of winning every game that we can possibly win. I think there will be some Dylan haters out there, or people who have maybe lost respect for Dylan out of his decision to leave the club, who will be happy with this decision that Dylan isn't playing first grade.
You're absolutely right. Whereas my emotions, or lack of emotions, I guess, come from a pure football side of it, don't they? Whereas if you're out there gunning for Dylan because he's leaving the club and happy that he's been dropped or being shifted around because of that, then that is probably the most petty thing you could possibly be as a Parramatta fan.
So, to me, the question that Jason Riles should be answering, this is from a supporter's perspective, my perspective as a supporter, not everyone's perspective. But spoiler, Shelley's got a post in that I'm just in the process of editing at the moment, and I think she takes a similar stance to what mine is, and that is, if we're fronting up to watch the games, we want the Eels to be in the best possible opportunity to win. Is Dylan a better or worse 5'8" than Joash right now? Joash may go on to be a better 5'8" than Dylan Brown. He's a talent, and he's at the start, the absolute start of his rugby league journey. I believe Dylan Brown is still a better 5'8" than Joash. Joash is the future. I want, and as Shelley has said in her post, Jason Riles is saying that the future is now. So he's focused right now on the future. I would also say the present is now, and I want as many wins as I can get this season. I want to be watching the game and feeling like the Eels are a very good chance of winning, or a chance of winning every game. And I'm not sure that completely leaving Dylan out of the team is a selection that is the best possible team selection at the moment. And that comes from someone like myself who's got the utmost respect for Jason Riles, who is so on board with the rebuild. I don't have unrealistic expectations of this year at all, but I have an expectation that each week we are going to see a team that is the best possible team based on available players. I guess this is where he's paid to be the coach. But if he's saying that he thinks that Joash is now a better 5'8" than Dylan, I don't think he's saying that. I think he's actually saying, I need to start worrying about the future right now, and I'm prepared to use this year's matches to prepare for 2026. Is that how you're seeing it, John?
Oh yeah, I think this is pretty clearly a message that he is saying that the top 8 is an unfeasible outcome for the Parramatta Eels in their current iteration. With Mitchell Moses having missed most of the season, with all the garbage from the MRC, with all the bad luck of injuries, with all the bad luck and the issues they've had, just getting his systems in place and not quite being on top of that. I wouldn't say it's an admission of giving up, but it's more saying that I'm going to steal a march on the competition as much as I can and start prepping for next year. If anything, I think this is being true to his mission statement since he got here in day one and started making a series of difficult, aggressive, but pragmatic roster calls. As we mentioned on the Instant Reaction podcast, where we had this debate in a I suppose similar but different capacity, being more obviously raw and visceral because of the outcome of the game. I think that this is a rookie coach who is behaving very much unlike a rookie coach, in that he is putting his cojones out there and really doubling down on a vision that you see a lot of rookie coaches saying that they want to do this generic thing and that generic thing that will lead to being a better team. Riles is talking the talk and walking the walk, and he's rustling some feathers. As in your case here, like you're saying, you want to see the best 17 out there. He I think in a neutral script he would be in complete accord with you, but in this case he's obviously seen the tipping point. He is leveraging against it now and saying that enough is enough. Dylan, you've made the decision to go to Newcastle, and there's a candid article in the Daily Telegraph in the wake of this that went more into depth on the background behind that and how close there was to being a Galvin Kaipius poor Dylan Brown freeway trade, the one that had been rumoured a long time. But yeah, he is clearly, he doesn't want to just tread water this year, which would be the ultimate outcome if you're taking a macro view. It would be the ultimate outcome from even getting a few more. If playing Dylan netted you 1, 2, 3 more wins than not playing Dylan at 5'8" over Joe Ash, you're still treading water in the big picture. So I definitely am in alignment with the coach here. I can understand people that want to see the best team there. I see a few people in chat with the similar idea coming through that, or asking the question, well, how many games did Dylan win us this year, or has won us in the last 2 years? Are we really that much of a better team with Dylan in it? Look, I think it's pretty clear we're a better team with Dylan.
John, can I say in response to that, and I'll just pluck a name out of the air, how many games have we won with Junior in the team this year? How many games have we won with Isaiah Iongi in the team this year?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty clear that Dylan is a better 5'8" than Josh right now. If you're arguing against that. So I'm just saying,
you can pluck that for anyone that's played the majority of games for Parramatta this year. You can pluck the same statistic.
Yeah.
Because we're not winning games. So does that mean that, this player or that player is particularly to blame? Dylan was awful at the start of the year. Has he been on fire since then? Maybe not, but I still would suggest, as you're about to say as well, that he is still, in terms of what he can produce in a game, a better 5'8" at this stage of the respective careers. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see Joe Ash part of the 17. And I'm happy that if they've made the call to go with Joe Ash as the 5'8" into the future, I believe that's the right call. I have no issue whatsoever with that. I think he is going to be a sensational 5'8" for Parramatta into the future. So this isn't a question of talent. It's a question of where they are in their respective careers now.
Yeah, and I definitely understand where you're coming from that. And my counterpoint, not so much to you, but in the general discourse about that in my blog today with the weekend wrap, was we look back on this season and we mentioned it in the instant reaction in regards to the stuff that we couldn't control in our own backyard. There's half a dozen games this year we could have won by being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% better as a team across the park. That's how thin the margin for error is when you're in the midfield of the competition. That's how close it is to being third last or being maybe even sixth on the ladder. And on that basis, if Jason Ryles legitimately believes that this process, elevating Joash over Dylan Brown, can lead to Joash being, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% better next year as he looks to accelerate that development of being a 5'8" for frontline playmaker alongside Mitchell Moses, who we hope we get back next week based on the coach's comments in the post-match presser, then yeah, I'm all for it. And I know that people will be frustrated in your camp there, arguing that we should have the best 17 out there right now. But like I said, margins of victory can be so thin in this game. And if you're talking big picture, which is where I'm at completely right now, I am entirely big picture, which means that there could, I don't know where it would be, but there could be more pragmatic calls to come this year as Ryles looks to get younger players into the fold, getting them maybe blooded or getting a taste of first grade. I don't know if it means any sort of, what I say doesn't mean, or I don't know. We're literally seeing Jermaine Hopgood being transitioned to the front row this week, which is something I've been calling for too. So, yeah, it's I think this could be the real big turning point for the selection process in general this year.
John, the call that I am happy with, you sort of, intimated, because in Jermaine Hopgood being at prop, it means Jack Williams is playing in the back row, which is the selection decision that I'm happiest about, because if we've lost the strike power of Gideon on an edge, we can at least pick up what Jack Williams can deliver on an edge. And I think when he's been playing in the middle, we've missed what he can deliver out wide. And we've seen evidence in games this year that his leg speed is a threat on an edge, leg speed and power. And hopefully he's able to deliver something this week. And all I will say as well about the rest of the team is it's been a tough year without Mitch Moses, John. Mitch has played 6 games this year. I don't know whether we'll get to see him in every game for the remainder of the season, but on top of Mitch only playing 8 games last year, to come into this year and he only plays 6 games thus far.
It is a bitter pill to swallow, yeah.
You're not just talking about the best player in the Eels team. You're talking about the captain of the team as well. And
legitimately one of the best. There is a very strong argument that he is the pound-for-pound peer of Nathan Cleary at halfback. Like Cleary having achieved more at the club level with a better team, but Moses having been elevated to a higher tier quite clearly in representative football. Yeah, that's a big loss.
And that is a fair call, John, that when elevated to play alongside and against higher tier players in the premier stage that you could get in rugby league, that Mitch Moses has risen to a higher level than what Nathan Cleary has on that similar stage throughout his career. And we know that Nathan Cleary is a supreme premiership player, supreme. I've rarely seen the likes of someone who can influence a game as much as what Nathan Cleary does. So we've got much respect for Nathan Cleary as a player, but we're certainly missing out on Mitch Moses. Anyway, John, we should probably move on.
Yeah, it's power for the rest of the team list, because we are chirping and going in circles a little bit. But let's go to the NRLW now. Coming off the back of their 14-0 shutout against the Warriors, Steve Georgalis has kept an even keel, not looking to make changes right now, which is interesting too, because there is a big name on the extended roster who it looks like they're fit, but I'm not sure if they're going to be included on the weekend. But Avi Church is the fullback and captain. Zali Faye, Martha Mattielli on the wings. Then you got Rory Owen and Lindsay Tui in the centres. Cassie Hiku and Rachel Pearson are the 6 and 7 respectively. Front row was Elsie Arbett, Ruben Cherrington and Bree Eels. Chloe Jackson, Paige Travis and Riverly Arlaw round out your back row. Then on the interchange, Tanika Todd Hunter, Rashay Farmer-Suli, Tess McWilliams and Fleur Jin. So Tess, who was a call-up to that game against the Warriors, now ratified officially onto the starting roster, the top 17 interchange, Mahalia Murphy, though, 18th player this week, not on the injury report either. So keep an eye out on that one, whether she features here against the Canberra Raiders. And she heads the extended roster that also has Rosemary Beckett, Ruby Jean Kennard-Ellis, Yasmin Baker, and Chelsea Makira alongside her. But given that Mahalia is one of the co-captains of the squad, Craig, and B, has been one of our starting back rowers for a couple of years now, you'd think that if she's fit, she probably gets picked.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me.
John, we spoke during the instant reaction and also in our live appearance at Parramatta Leagues Club about the performance of the Eels NRLW team last week. It was highly disappointing because there was they just got beaten to the punch from the start. It was probably one of the worst games you'd see from an attack perspective from the Eels.
Yeah, beyond clunky. Yeah.
It was beyond clunky. Yeah, it was hard to find words because we were seeing them barely able to complete a set.
Yep.
Their opponents this week, the Raiders, have had a couple of ordinary weeks to start off the season. The Eels should end up going into this as favourites. And look, it's not necessarily a surprise to see it's pretty much the same team that the Eels have run out this week. Firstly, because they've had injuries that have impacted them, but secondly, Steve Georgalis is going to show faith in a team that this is really his first choice team without certain players being available, and he's going to look for them to be stinging from the game that's just transpired. So there's not really too much to say about the team selections themselves other than it's probably what we expected.
Yes. Like I said, the one thing to watch out here is if we have a Mahalia Murphy, got to get that mouth moving. Mahalia Murphy finds a way to get squeezed into that team somehow. Given that there are some young forwards in that roster, you could maybe make a case that if she's good to go, she'll get in there over them. But if not, she could be turning out at Aubrey Keats Reserve as part of that Harvey Norman setup, which we'll get to very shortly. Before then, though, the New South Wales Cup are up next. They, too, on the road to Canberra. They've got the semi-prime time slot here. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff in the NRL. It's a 1:45 kickoff in the NRLW, or 12:45, sorry. And then they've got the 5:15 slot. So got a bit of a reverse docket here for broadcasting. But they take on the Raiders. A couple of changes this week. At fullback, you got Arpa Twiddle, Jake Tungor and Hayes Dunster on the wings. Araz Namva and Richard Penisini round out that back line. Matty Hunter will continue to partner on Volkman. Matty enjoying a very good campaign in the New South Wales Cup. Really starting to catch some eyes on social media too, Craig, with his good playmaking abilities, both as a scorer and a player that sets up his compatriots. Then you got Wiremu Greg, Joey Lussick and Tony Mattielli in the starting front row. Tyrese Lakini, another young gun, continues to turn out on that starting edge role. Dan Keir captains the team from the opposite edge. And then another player who, like Bowie Simonson and Sam Tuilagi before him, will come back to the NRL via reserve grade. It's Luca Moretti. Finally back, getting some game time under his belt here in Reggie's. Then the extended roster, the interchange bench, is Brendan Hands, Brock Parker, Saxon Pryke, and I put Kane Kalache there as a guess because there was a vacant player on the roster. Let me just check because the club did post the NRL team, New South Wales Cup team in the meantime. They have, it is Reece Alderton. So let me update my team sheet. It is Reece Alderton, not Kane Kalache, in the final slot there. So Eels.
That's Reece's first appearance for the season.
I believe so. He was a fixture in the team last year, but his first cap this year for the New South Wales Cup roster as the Eels tap into their Ron Massey depth a little bit there. But otherwise, pretty much the team that took on the Penrith Panthers and came out ahead, plus Luca Moretti in the back row, which is a pretty handy inclusion.
John, you look at the team now and you think, okay, this is close to their full strength, you'd say? Well,
given that there are long-term either injuries or off-field stuff happen to other frontline players like Sean Lane and Ryan Madison, we've spoken about Lane before, but Matto's got that back injury. This is probably as good as it gets to them, especially now given that Kitione Kautoga is also out, so there goes another player up. They do get some of those players back by virtue of the suspensions returning. we got Will Penisini, Kelma Tuilagi, and then Mitchell Moses, who's not suspended but is injured. So there are players that come back, but this has been their set and forget lineup for a few weeks now, and they've done really well.
John, it's going to be interesting. At some stage, I'll sit down and I'll try to calculate the toll that's been taken on the Eels with regard to injury and suspension, because the media are making a bit about South and how injury plagued they've been. I would counter that surely the Eels.
We have used the most players this year, so we're at 32 right now. So we've used the entire top 30 plus some, and yeah, it's been one of those years. And look, that's not the takeaway from South Sydney, who have undergone absolute garbage too in terms of bad luck. They're copying out the wazoo too, but it is funny how they get the poor thing sort of narrative from the media, whereas the Eels can lose a play to foul play for 2 months, and it's like, yeah, have a cup of tea. So
nothing to see here, mate.
Exactly.
Nothing to see.
The cup round out that the battery of games out at GIO Stadium. Harvey Norman Women's Premiership up next, Craig. They play at Albury Keats Reserve, 5 o'clock on Saturday, taking on Mounties. And they look like this. Ella Carlisle is at fullback, Paige Knapp and Tegan Longer on the wings, Josephine Lenars and Kiana Takarangi in the centres, Matisse Bettridge partners Aaliyah Sufan in the halves, Taylor Falanico, Amani Lee Ava'e are your bookends with Chelsea McCura dummy half. Jessica Kennedy, I believe, has the C next to her name in the back row. She'll be on one edge with Fontaine Tafua on the other. Ashley Pottinger is the dummy half turn lock forward, rounding out that starting roster. Then on the interchange, Ava Jones, Bella Sanford, Alana O'Loughlin, and Caitlin Pearden. Very young interchange bench there. A couple of handy players.
A lot of familiar names.
A lot of Pathways players there.
Pathways.
Yeah. Bella Sanford, I think, making her first appearance in HNWP this year. She was a good prospect out of the Tasha Gale. So good to see her still being around the joint. I did see a question in chat asking about Alicia Bell and whether she was injured or not. I honestly don't know. Craig, have you got any update on Alicia? Because I know she's been she's part of the coaching setup for the Pathways, but I do believe she's still an active player. And she,
as far as I was aware, she's still an active player. Yes, she's been she was assistant coach of the
Lisa Fiola?
Lisa
Fiola, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so, and our apologies if we've got that one wrong. But I'm not sure, John, because she came into the Harvey Norman's team mid-season last year. She wasn't in the team at the start of the season, but got a run mid-season after being part of the squad. So yep. I think, actually, she might have been named early in the season, then wasn't named for about half the season, then got some games in the back end of the year. So. And John, that now takes us to the Jersey Flegg.
Yeah, and we've got most of the team list again. Still missing one player here with a vacant spot on the wing. But starting at fullback is Cooper Fuller, TBA in the number 2, Corey Lee, Will Lewis, or maybe it's TBA in the number 5. But one winger is absent right now. Corey Lee and Will Lewis are your centres though, with Muhammad Al-Madin named to play on one of the wings. Partnering each other in the halves is Lorenzo Talatina and Joshua Lynn. Actually, Lorenzo's name did get a run in that Dylan Brown article, by the way, Craig, alongside Lincoln Fletcher. So a couple of Eels there to keep an eye out on in the playmaking stocks. But in the front row, we've got Damascus Nemia, Paddy Spence, and Ryder Taulagi. Good to see Ryder really starting to solidify himself in that starting role, even if the team is struggling a little bit. But in the back row, it's Dom Lestratus, Josiah Funa-Ayuta, and Max Popo making his first start. Coming up.
No, he played last week, I think.
Oh, sorry, his first official
start. Sorry.
Yeah, start. He played off the bench last week. Yeah.
Yep,
So getting elevated to that starting lock forward role. Popo, like his other SG ball compatriots in the team, Funa-Ayuta, Taulagi, etc. A very good prospect there. So he's making big steps forwards. Then on the bench, Dom's brother Raphael heads the list with Lachlan Koinakis, Yeti Samuelu, and I've got him in the 17 jersey, but it's actually 22 on the team list. Big Izack Jim back in the squad. Good to see him on the interchange there with a jersey that fits him in the 22 because he is a big boy.
Well, I think we're looking at about without a player named, and who knows, that could be Dom Ferrugia. in that missing player on the wing. But that's there's about 7 players in that team who've come through from this year's SG ball team, which makes it an extra young team. Very disappointing result last week, John. I was out there to cover it at Kellyville, and it was a hard watch. The completion rate was left a lot to be desired. In fact, I'm just going to have a bit of a look and see if we've got.
Oh, we do. I have the data here for you, mate. It was 42% possession, 62% completion rate. So yeah, not a winning formula, I'll tell you that. And the Penrith Panthers took a full advantage of that, prevailing 40-16. Eels playing, unfortunately, very, very ordinary football. Like you said, the errors, and it was a theme for pretty much every grade except for the New South Wales Cup. The errors piled up so quickly, and we know they're better than this. I see Warren's given up on the flag this year, saying the flag are gone, unfortunately. I don't think they're gone, but they could be gone if they don't solve this quickly. They are perhaps the best team in the competition if they figure things out. The talent, the depth, the brand of football they play when they're locked in, I don't think there are many teams that can go with them in this grade, Craig. They've met the best teams in the competition earlier this year and really handled them all. But right now, they're a shadow of themselves. And, yeah, it's I think that the wear and tear and the attrition of the season has really caught up with them, and they need to find a way somehow to reset. And that's a big challenge for both a young squad and a young coach to find the right levers to pull in that regard. It's not easy, because if it was easy, every team that ran out of steam would find a way to get their second wind, and that doesn't happen. And yeah, that's going to be the real challenge for them, is finding that second wind, finding the ability to push through that barrier. And if they can't, then Warren might be right; they could be gone.
Yeah, it is going to be hard for them to bounce back, John, because that injury toll is fairly significant. They've lost a winger, 2 centres. Actually, they lost another winger in the pre-season.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, they lost a very handy wing in the pre-season that we haven't even seen yet.
Fullback, their captain and 5'8".
Their co-captain and prop forward, Tiankin Brown's out.
And prop forward, yes, as you said. So they're just, and then a bunch of other players as well. So that's where we're seeing. I think earlier we were seeing a mixture of injury, but also blooding that saw SG ball players starting to get a run from mid-season. But now it's just all hands on deck with where things stand. So, John, I think the last thing we need to talk about now is the confirmation of the signing of Izack Tago.
Yeah, so this one came out earlier today. Nothing really new had been added to it, but the club did make it official. There were some thoughts that because we'd waited the full 10 days for the cooling off period to pass, that maybe there would be a counter offer from the Dragons, but no. Izack Tago is a Parramatta Eel. The club confirmed that it is a 1+1 deal if the second year in their favour. Tago, we had a big conversation about this and why people have the right to feel aggrieved about the signing, but he's a Parramatta Eel now. Adds a lot of depth and consistency to that forward pack. We could certainly use a player like Belin right now with a bit of to help build that platform for the middle. But, yeah, he will be a Parramatta Eel next year and maybe the year after that, depending on how he plays and how his body holds up. But the club hold the rights on that lever, whether they want to pull it or not. So,
John, as far as I was concerned, there was never any doubts that Izack Tago was coming to the club. It was a move that he wanted. He wanted to be at the Eels. There was a lot that was gone through in terms of, making sure that he was the right signing in terms of like within the club and in chats with Izack Tago. So
I don't think you make that signing lightly. You don't just go out there and say,
you don't. It was,
oh no,
there's
Izack
a lot of
Tago's,
due diligence.
Yeah, like geez, he's a rough character off the field, but he can play a bit of football, so let's sign him. No, like whether you like it or not, the club would have done their due diligence, and you don't have to agree with their due diligence, and that I don't think you're unfair if you hold that opinion. But yes, the club has obviously asked the questions they needed to ask of Belin, and he is in one way or the other produced the right answers. And certainly his form on the field warrants being in the NRL. So,
John, what I will share with people is that as far as due diligence is concerned, both from the club's perspective and even Jack de Belin and what he was, the extent to which he wanted this and was completely open with the due diligence. I just say rest assured that everything was covered, everything was ticked off in terms of due diligence. I think when we first were speaking about the signing, and I was a bit in two minds about it. I've really come round to the signing, the logic of the signing, the process that the club went through. I think all Eels supporters would be on board with the fact that they've gone about it in the way that they did, and the fact that it is a 1-year deal with an option in the club's favour on top of everything else. Because if you're looking just purely on stats this year, Jack de Belin is producing, and we need middles. We need mobile and aggressive middles.
And the other thing too is that, as we've argued in the past, that you either sign your stud or you go find your solid bridging player, and that's what he is. He is a bridging player. There is a number. We literally talked about in the flag right now a number of talented young players that are coming through the club. I'm pretty certain Jason Ryley has a number of them earmarked as legitimate NRL prospects, but you need those guys to hold the fort until they can get there, and he's going to be the guy that holds the fort.
Not just arrive in first grade, but then to be
to get their feet underneath them.
Selected every week in first grade.
Huge difference between getting your feet wet and being able to swim with the Sharks.
Yes, and so we've got a year this year, for example, with Sam Tuilagi, where he's at that stage where he's convincing Jason Ryley now that he is a regular selection in NRL. You've got Luca Moretti also just at that point now. But then you go below that level and you look at Tony Mattielli, and he's only played one game this year. He might be at the stage next year where Jason Ryley might be prepared for him to get a few more games, but he's not a regular selection. So what you need is players of experience who, as you said, can hold that fort while these players start to advance themselves in the pecking order as regular selection NRL players.
And Sam's been a bit of an outlier in that regard too. For a young bookend, it's tough to stay in the NRL the way he has outside of the injury, which maybe was a blessing in disguise in that regard. It gave him the time off to recharge the batteries and get through the wear and tear. But yeah, de Belin, and in the chat I saw a question from Chris Hill, Jack de Belin for lock. I would argue with the way we're using our systems, he probably trends closer to a prop for us.
Yeah.
You look at what Dylan Walker's doing and how much has been asked of the number 13 role. Maybe he's just an outright prop, but he could still play lock forward, be a bit more of a smash mouth north-south lock forward. But I think that we saw against Penrith that Riles and the rest of the coaching staff, Wiseman to Moa and Brown and whatnot, they're starting to really institute complex patterns into the attacking system. And our boys got them down pat 90% of the way against Penrith, but that last 10% was the errors. I think that...
And were costly.
Yeah, they were costly. And if you're going to do that, you need a ball-playing 5'8" lock forward, at least for a good portion of the time in the field. So definitely something to watch there. But, yeah, going to be a solid player for the Parramatta Eels. Old, but less wearing the tyres because of all that stuff we sort of talked about before. But, yes, that is I think that is the final piece of Parramatta news. I'm looking at my run sheet now. Give me one sec. We talked about Gideon. Chat, have we missed anything for Parramatta? It's been, again, not a massive week for Eels news outside of the drama from the MRC.
No, we pretty much ticked off on the results last week, and as we were talking about the team list. So I think we're just about ready for you to hit your interlude, mate.
Yeah, we'll take questions because we're going to power through some NRL stuff. We'll take questions at the end of the podcast, guys, to wrap things up. But we got very anti-establishment this week, Craig, and I was so close to pulling the trigger on a bit of Rage Against the Machine, but got to stick to our Australian roots. So,
mate, I nearly went that way with the Instagram posts that I put up. Instead, I went with Sympathy for the Devil.
Yes, that's another good one. Yes, another classic song for these sort of moments. But I kept to our Australian roots and a great Aussie punk rock band in the Living End. They have a number of their catalogue that would have been fitting here, but I don't know the answer to this question, so I'll leave it out there for chat. But who was going to save us from the MRC?
Just don't understand. It seems all out of place now. And I know it's late, but you know what they say now. What they say now. Who's gonna provide us? Who's gonna divide us? Who's gonna provide us? Who's gonna divide? Where's the writing on the wall? Who's gonna save us? Who's gonna provide?
Well, the MRC certainly provide us with a lot of controversy, and they don't divide us. They bring us all together with our anger. But, I don't know who's going to save us from them, because that is the question that's been bugging the NRL for damn near decades now. And the system is very clearly broken. But on that note, Craig, let's get into the NRL branch of the news podcast.
John, can I just say before you go on, Living End, saw them, I think it was the Red Hot Summer tour where they were doing the festivals, and they had one close to home at Bella Vista, and they were one of the acts that was on. Very good.
Chris Hill doesn't agree with the selection. He says that Living End's rockabilly, not punk rock. I mean,
yes, yep.
You're probably close there, but it's the closest thing we have to punk rock in Australia. The scene wasn't as big here as it was in England and America, but we ain't got any, Sex Pistols and whatnot, and all the OG punk rockers, but we have to make do with Living End.
We could go to the Saints, John.
Oh, true. If you're going well back, yeah.
And probably now, what's our it'll come to me, John. I've got a one of the bands, Sydney band, has a great Parramatta fan that's one of the band, classic punk rockers.
Radio Birdman.
No. They still play from time to time.
Not the one that Park Driveway.
No. Ajax was always in it.
Frenzel?
No. Sydney band. Band.
I'm looking at chat here. Chat, you got any? You got the backup for 60s here?
We need Jeff with that.
Yeah. Actually, I saw a comment in chat. Someone gave Jeff a shirt saying that would have been great for our podcast tonight in regards to you. So who was that? If you're still here, Frenzel Rom?
No, it's not. I'm going to look. We'll carry on, John, because I'm about to search. It'll come up very, very quickly.
You say it's a recent band? Like they're still active?
No, would have started late 70s, early 80s, I think. But I'm determined. I'm going to get it because he's been a huge, he's been a contributor, comes on to TCT. The Hard-Ons.
The Hard-Ons. There you go.
The Hard-Ons. How on earth I wasn't. It just
Peter Black and Ray on.
Yes, I'm talking about Ray, who often posts as Ajax, and he's a huge Eels fan. So I'm very disappointed with myself that I just couldn't remember the Hard-Ons, because I kept thinking of a couple of other punk bands at the time But we've had our share, John. We've had our share of punk bands in Australia. So
The Australian, I mean, and it's sort of, you can't talk about the Australian scene without New Zealand too, because the two scenes have been so intertwined with their big acts. But the Aussies and the Kiwis, the Anzac Alliance, have produced some good music, haven't they? So,
John, there's probably an avenue for an off-season.
if we got
podcast
you and
where
Jeff
we
on the
just get into our
podcast,
music.
just talking about the Australian scene, it'd be might hit the YouTube limit of 12 hours on a broadcast.
Yeah, and I'll go into the reasons why I have the deafness that I have, which comes from many years of going to the pubs and clubs and catching the great Australian bands of the 80s, early 80s. So anyway, that's for another point. We do have NRL news to cover, as you said.
Yeah, not a good week for coaches of bad clubs. NRL 360 sort of led with these stories last night, Craig. But if you're Adam O'Brien or Des Hasler, your seat might be on fire right now. The stories have been breaking this week that Adam O'Brien is now facing the axe. He has been, feels like on the axe or under the axe for years, but Newcastle finally willing to maybe pay out that contract. And on top of that,
he will get a payout too, because I think
they just re-signed
unlike
him.
Des,
Des has a performance clause that the Titans can activate in the coming, I think, if not this week, the next loss, they can activate it. So well done to the Titans for having a bit of a redundancy built into his contract there. But Adam O'Brien just re-upped last year. He got the extension. So they're going to have to pay out a pretty handsome golden handshake there. And then, like I said, the Gold Coast Titans also looking to get a new coach. Early chatter was Josh Hannay, the front runner for the Titans gig 60s. And the Knights maybe looking to go internal with Blake Green. And there was someone else chat. I don't know if you know who it was, but the Blake Green was one of the candidates I saw mentioned.
I think they talked about the A.
Brad Arthur has been linked to both, but most of the chatter I've seen, at least preliminarily, is those internal options. But that can change very quickly. We know that. Big things happening now in the coaching ranks for a couple of teams, couple of spots that we expected to be replaced. To be frankly, quite honest, Newcastle, they've made the 8 or scraped into the 8 in the last couple of years, but it's a club that's treading water. I spoke about Parramatta not treading water, Craig. They are treading water. They're doing it's the worst kind of roster management where you got the star fullback who you try and build around really inefficiently. They've bled some key juniors to other clubs, haven't been able to find the key recruits, and they've got a coach that, look, Adam O'Brien, he's not an idiot. He's not a terrible coach. I don't know if he's a good coach though, and that's a tough line to be underneath in the NRL, and it looks like Newcastle have finally agreed. So and Des, I know that he tried to walk it back, but Brent Reid was exactly on the money when he labelled that Des's coaching is like that of a dinosaur. Des, in the 2000s, Des was, I don't know if you call him cutting edge, but he was zagging where the rest of the competition was zigging. He's clearly a good man manager in his time. He was the right piece at the head of that Manly squad that was very talented but hadn't brought it all together. And he got everything out of that Manly squad against the Melbourne Storm that were cheating the cap. And did a great job there and won a couple of premierships, but he is so far off the pace of the NRL right now as a coach. So, yeah. And the thing that was interesting with the Hasler stuff was that there is speculation that anything happening in the Hasler could trigger clauses for Tino Fa'as or Mala'awi. So that is something that we might be monitoring in the coming weeks, I guess, if there is a coach clause for Big T.
I think without question, John, without question, the Eels are cashed up. They are waiting for something big to fall out from a club, someone big to fall out from a club. I'm sure the Eels would chase hard.
They wouldn't be alone, though. But
no, they wouldn't be alone. But I'm expecting that were you to have players of that caliber that get shaken out of a tree due to any of the shifts that are going on, be it with coaches, be it with other players moving on, Tino would definitely be one that I think without question that the Eels, as I said, would chase hard and would look to make an offer that would be highly competitive as clubs chase him. So now you also, in talking about those two, where do you think that Todd Payton sits?
That's the other one that is sort of, he hasn't slipped underneath. The momentum is building. And in the media, it's building too, because there was a lot of talk about him lesser to the other two as the tertiary sort of guy in danger. But someone brought up the fact that he's got 5 or 6 Origin players on that roster. And again, is just a squad that is constantly on the fringe of the 8 and nothing more. And not just Origin
He's
players.
got that. Yeah, I was going to say it's not just Origin players, but
Tom freaking Dearden,
yes,
the hottest young half prospect in the game, who has come into his own as a fully fledged star in the last couple of years. Really been coronated, obviously, this year's Origin series, but he was playing the same football for the last 2 years, Craig. I've been a big Tom Dearden proponent for a number of years. I have mentioned on the podcast here and there, but with my brother, when we talk football, we're always, even for a Queenslander, pumping him up. He is a star that has arrived. But beyond that, great back rowers, got talent in the back line. It's got Drinkwater, a flawed, attackingly orientated fullback, but very talented, no doubt. Yeah. Payton had the mother of all sort of landings in a row, won the the coach of the year, but it's been downhill since, hasn't it? And he feels like a man that is flailing and is bereft of ideas of how to turn it around in North Queensland for a roster that should be closer to the top 4 than it is to floating for the top 8.
You'd almost think that it would be beneficial for both parties for them to part ways, because when he's starting to look, as you suggested, bereft of ideas, then you go, well, look, for your own career and also for the club's way forward, it might be time to part ways. It's another club, the BA's been mentioned, because he has his history of coaching up in North Queensland with the Brothers Club, I think it was, off the top of my head. But, it's the last one that I think has been, it was certainly mentioned the other night on 360, was Anthony Seibold. And
who had the lowest.
Manly's couple of wins,
got some breathing room, because he was from 2. The article a month ago was he was 2 losses from getting the sack, wasn't he? And that Mick Ennis was ready to be installed as a Manly coach. So I don't think that seat's cut off that much, mate. If you're that close to
my mail is that it's not all rosy between him and the players. In fact, between the players and the coaching staff there. So we'll see how that does play out there. Winning seems to solve a lot of things.
It does. It really does.
So if team keeps winning, then
it's a panacea.
A lot of the
sure.
pressure. No one really wants to talk about how a team's going in that regard. So anyway, mate, we press on. Injury news with South.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that injury toll earlier, and this is a player kind of like Mitchell Moses, has barely played this year. Cody Walker officially ruled out for the remainder of the year. Calf injury got to him, mate. He is not a young fella. He's not a spring chicken anymore. Souths really need a contingency plan. They need a succession plan in place. Obviously, Humphreys.
Apparently, they had one, didn't they, with the Pommy bloke they saw?
Lewis Dodd being paid $700K to play reserve grade. Yeah. Look, I know we're paying Dylan Brown a lot of money not to play this week, but Dylan's got the runs on the board at the NRL level. That's a different kind of decision, isn't it, Craig, to put Dylan on ice this week as opposed to Lewis Dodd? Yeah. So, and they did sign the reserve grade halfback from St. George to a bit of fanfare in the last couple of weeks. But Cody Walker, obviously a talented player, but his best days are behind him, and the injuries are really adding up for him. People have been critical of what Mitchell Moses had happened to him because of rep football. Cody's just breaking down playing clubland football. So rough times there for the Bunnies.
He turns 36 in January. So as you said, not a spring chicken. The remarkable thing is, what was he, 26 when he debuted?
Very late bloomer, yeah.
And to have gone on, when you debut at 26,
Play a decade in the NRL.
to
it's
play
impressive.
over 200 first grade games, it's an extraordinary achievement by him, and especially when you think how many games, certainly that he's missed this season, that he'd been quite a durable player in the years before this year. To play like 9-10 years and get 220 first grade games to average 22 games a year, it tells you that he's provided plenty of value.
Father
It's
time
just
undefeated,
been a
mate.
tough year this year.
Yeah, Father time. He always wins. He gets you in the end.
Absolutely. And then I think you've got the last thing.
Days of our Bulldogs. Yes. 1 week after dropping Lachlan Galvin to reserve grade, they've now given Toby Sexton the punt. Apparently, you talk about the breathing room that winning creates. Not the case at Canterbury. They eked by the Cowboys, and it wasn't good enough from Toby Sexton. He's been dropped in place of Lachlan Galvin coming in at halfback as the Dogs continue to shuffle the deck chairs. It's not deck chairs in the Titanic, but tell you what, they're really panic stations right now, aren't they? They won against North Queensland. It wasn't convincing. They were on the ropes for most of that first half, pretty similar to what we did against Penrith, where just a number of errors from North Queensland, a la what the Eels did, let the opposition get away with a lead at half time, and that was the difference. And on top of that, did you see that no try? The bomb try, rather?
No, I didn't.
You want to shoot the player. Was it Scott Drinkwater, chat? Who was it?
Yes, I did see that. Sorry, I did see the where it was
out.
lost over the line.
Yeah.
Was it do you think there was a high shot from what's his name, the big fella, as he tackled over the top?
Well, if the jerseys were reversed, maybe it was a high shot in the eyes of the officials, Craig. I think there was definitely an argument for it. Again, you're wearing the wrong jersey, I suppose, for the call. But you still should have scored that. Still should have scored.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was bad grounding. But yes, the Dogs roster issues is fascinating stuff. They had a winning formula. They were crushing it, except for wet weather football. That was one thing that got to them. Queensland teams in wet weather football was their kryptonite. The Dolphins and the Broncos pasted them a couple of times in those circumstances, but they throw their hat into the ring for Lachlan Galvin, secure the big signing, and I don't know. I have never seen a marquee transfer mid-season walk this path, Craig. Usually it's either play your game in reserve grade, get up to speed of the club, okay, Roger's your father's brother, or Robert's your father's brother, we're good to go. Or you plug him straight in, like Talon De Silva, who didn't have the fanfare of the Galvin acquisition by any means, but to put him onto the bench, to completely reconfigure your spine in the game, to then drop into reserve grade, to then put him into the team over the first choice halfback. Like, maybe the Dogs keep winning and they find a way to make it work, but this has got to be the most complicated, most toxic path to get a marquee mid-season recruit into your team that I've ever seen.
Yep, that's a fair call, John. It's a fair call. And it's a shame, too. It's an absolute shame.
Yeah, I mean, if only there was another club that he could have just walked in to start playing 5A at, but that's a sliding doors moment now. Chat, that is the official end to our docket. I'm just going to quickly pull up breaking news and see if there's anything that's happened in the meantime, but my Discord pings are not saying anything's happened. No, I think we're I mean, there's, I don't want to talk about that McKinnon stuff. That seemed whatever. That seems to be most of the big news stories, so we'll take questions now. Chris Hill, right off the bat, is Josh Kerr unsigned for next year? The problem now is that the NRL signings portal has removed player options from the official portal to be seen because of the backlash for player options, due in part to Parramatta. But he is you can't say Redcliffe, he's a Dolphin. Josh Kerr. Where's Josh Kerr? There he is. He is listed as off contract on the NRL signings portal. So he's a pretty handy big body off the interchange. 29, turned 29 this year in February. Yeah, he might be off contract. I'll have a quick gander on the see if there's any official news article on it. Gallagher reckons that Brock Parker's leaving. Heard that last week. I wouldn't be surprised, Gallagher. It's a tough gig when you're a Reggie's player looking to forge a path to the NRL. He has got a number of young forwards now that are coming through. They're going to be crowding that middle room 60s. We've seen.
Where's he rumoured to go to?
You got a club, Gallagher, that you heard that he could be going to. But yeah, right now, Saxon Pryke is contracted to the Parramatta Eels. Tiankin Brown and Damascus Nemu have gotten their looks in at New South Wales Cup, Craig. There are more young guys coming in behind that. We mentioned Max Popo being a middle. So you saw an article on it, did you, Chris? I mean, he'd be a handy bench player for sure. Yeah. If we've got the funds left over for a player like Josh Kerr, I'd have a look at it.
There was a bit of, I think there was a bit of interest from the Storm last year in Brock, just like at a lower end of the roster sort of recruit, bit of a project player. And to me, he'd be the sort that would fit in well with them, whether he'd be placed with a Queensland club, because he'd probably perform exceptionally well in Q Cup and be a handy player for the Storm to call on. So it wouldn't surprise me if he landed somewhere like that in terms of a decent landing spot for him. Any other?
Warren is asking for an update on Sean Lane. We did actually speak about this a couple of podcasts ago, Warren. Unofficially, it is our understanding that he will probably be winding up and moving into... I think the media actually reported about this as well in the Daily Telegraph at one point, but I believe he will be winding up and moving into a different capacity. But again, the club will have something to announce on that in the coming weeks and months.
I think everyone's seen the way that Sean has set himself up for post football career.
He has really carved out an important niche for his post playing career there that I'm sure the club and he will look to explore and set him up to be helping both himself and other people in that regard.
And we can also say that, like others who've approached their studies and made themselves set up their post-football career, Dave Gower has done that at the Eels with all of his studies.
Exactly. So,
and he's in like welfare and education at the club. Sean Lane's really done a lot of studies in psychology. You could imagine that a similar sort of role might await him.
Yep. In a similar vein, Gallagher's following up with Madison and Greg. He thinks that they're long odds of staying. Well, we know that Ryan Madison has been shopped around. That was in the press going back about 3 months now, Craig. Has been linked to a potential exit of the club. He does hold the contract rights, though. They are years in his favour, not the club's favour, so have to wait and see what happens there. Jim Sarantinos was on the podcast talking about there is still roster flexibility potentially to happen. Madison could be subject to that. Woody actually playing reasonable football in New South Wales Cup, Craig, but again, got a lot of young kids coming through, and his path back in the first grade is pretty clouded right now. He's barely gotten a look in this year, and that's only going to get worse as these SG-born flag prospects start to accelerate their development.
Yeah. I thought he's played pretty solid in New South Wales Cup. Excuse me. Since certainly since he had a few, he had a couple of
back-to-back suspensions essentially. But the football around those suspensions has been pretty good. And in fact, on the weekend, I thought he was one of the big reasons why the Eels were on the front foot against Penrith.
Yes.
And then
John, and what I was going to say as well. No, I'll leave it to the end. Leave it to the end.
Okay. More roster questions. Lussick Hands don't really need them now from Warren Thomas. Yeah, look, Hands is signed for next year, I believe, Craig, and Lussick is off contract. So given that we've picked up Talon Da Silva and Ryley Smith has been extended, we definitely still need that third dummy half on the roster. I think Brendan Hands can be that next year. But beyond that, you've got a number of internal options coming through, headed by Lachlan Koinakis, who you pointed out, Warren. But alongside that, you got Jack Hudson, you got Paddy Spence, who's getting the starting reps in the flag through the midpoint of the season. And then, obviously below that, you go into the reps. And you're looking a little bit further out in the projections. But Yeah, I imagine that's part of the roster trimming coming up. I would imagine that Lussick will find a role elsewhere, and that's just part and parcel of the game. Eminem, when is Tino arriving? Look, we've been working on that. We're doing what we can.
2026.
Yeah, 2026. There you go. Also, for shout out to Matt Dury from Eminem there too, saying he's looked good. Yeah, Matty's been pretty good off the bench.
He's always run a good line.
Yeah,
John.
and he's look, his biggest problem has been availability. Really, honestly, that has been what's held him back, as he gets dinged up here and there. But he's a pretty handy.
And you know that saying, John.
Yep, best ability, baby. And yeah, De Silva has looked good. That was a really nice debut from Talon. Didn't overplay his hand. Should have picked up a couple of penalties. That's what really is the shame out of that game. He sniped those markers on multiple occasions. Jamie, don't say that, Jamie. Gus hasn't met Tino apparently. Jesus, it's over. It's over. Gallagher saying that he hopes Dunster gets a crack before a call is made. Yeah, well, it harkens back to that adage we just used. Hayes' form this year has been fantastic, but he's also missed a big chunk of play. He is off contract, right, Craig? I would be, I'll be plenty happy for him to stick around on a second tier contract, but I don't think you can justify a top 30 contract now. It's rough. It is brutally, I suppose, pragmatic is the word you could use, but cold or callous. But those top 30 spots, they're a premium. And Hayes...
I wish beyond all wishes that Hayes had an uninterrupted run with injury this year. Because right from the start of the year, it seemed like he was back to being Hayes Dunster.
Yeah. And the form in the Cup really spoke towards that. 200 metres a game, breaking tackles, finishing tries, good defence. And you're talking about the significance of that Izack Tago tackle on Kitione Kautoga. And Kitione is only going to be out for 2 weeks, knock on wood. I'm going to hit my desk right now. And that is his season, but he should be back for the preseason, no issues. But that was the patient zero hip drop tackle, wasn't it? With Tyrell Fulmiano taking out Hayes Dunster. And you talk about career-altering moments. That is as big a career-altering moment as we've seen in the last 10 years, honestly. Hayes, on the back of that breakout year for the Eels, where he finished that season so strong heading into that preseason game against the Dragons, was de facto first-choice winger, and then barely cited ever since. So
Rookie of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right, Gal. Yeah, fantastic bloke, absolutely. I would love to see him. If he can't stay at Parramatta on a second-tier deal, I would be absolutely championing for him to get a gig somewhere else on a dev deal or a back-end top 30 deal. Absolutely. All the time in the world for him. And it'd be a great story to see him being able to do exactly that. But the Eels, the backline's suddenly very crowded. Like, we're talking about Hayes. Will Penisini comes back next week. Who misses out? I'm hoping that there's no injuries or suspensions that make that an easy decision. But you're talking about bumping someone out of that backline that doesn't deserve to get dropped. And that's where we're at. So, yeah, it's a good, I suppose, problem to have for Jason Rolls. But, yeah, it's unfortunate for Hayes. Yeah, he did have a puncture along too, didn't he, Jamie? Yeah, he's had some miserable luck. So, yeah, Sean Russell having a good year too, Gallagher, absolutely. We got any other quick questions before we start wrapping up, guys? I know there was a question for more signings for 26 from Warren. It's funny because we're in a situation where Jack DeBellin's the only external acquisition for next year that's coming next year because Talon De Silva's already on board, Craig. That's a big one right there. But we're in a position where we've locked up all our key internal signings essentially. We've locked up a number of the pathways prospects are going to be featuring next year and beyond. As Jim Tarantino said on both here and Talking Power, I mentioned the likes of Lorenzo Talatona, Chris Petrus, and whatnot, Josiah Funarayuta. But we're also in a position where we can be really aggressive and pounce on a player, whether it's Tino or someone else that becomes available. So it's a lot. It could go from 0 to 100 very quickly for Parramatta. So we have to just hold the fort, be strong until then. And I know as fans, we always fiend for it's like a crack hit. You want that big signing news to pop up and give you the big dopamine rush and make you feel better for next year. But even if the big signing doesn't come and you have to focus on the mid-range signings, I think that Jason Rolls has shown that he's got a pretty good eye for talent for things that fit his system or players that fit his system. So I am daring to dream that we could land a Tino West signing, but I am also prepared for the fact that it might not happen that way. So we have to wait and see. Warren saying, I'm saying if no more changes, is our squad really improving in 26? I think so. I think, hey, Mitchie, I think you project player improvement. You project systems being better integrated next year. There is also some capacity to be concerned about someone like Mitchell Moses being available based on what we've seen in the last 2 years. But there's also just an element of bad luck that surely must turn at some point with Mitch, right, Craig? Like, surely he has it gets better at some point. But I think you look at the young players in the roster, you look at players like Ozario Yongi, who are starting to find their feet, Kitione Kautoga, Jack Williams, who has been a victim of his versatility this year, not being able to be used to his best ability, Craig, because he's plugging holes in the middle or he's been thrown onto the edge in an emergency capacity. Guys like Jordan Samrani, there is a ton of talent in this roster that aren't at their ceiling. So I understand people having not trepidations or maybe putting a ceiling on their expectations for next year, but I think there's a good reason to think we improve by some margin next year.
Yeah, you have to expect that systems are going to be more embedded. The culture takes that continued step forward. The young players continue to develop because they go from being complete rookies with no experience in the NRL, which a number of them were this year, to having close to a full season of NRL behind them. And then you're looking at whatever additions continue to be made to the team. So I do see it as an upward trend that will be happening with the Eels.
A couple of final comments in that regard. Dave taking the long view here. He thinks that we're not going to be able to buy ourselves out of where we are, a 5-year rebuild, unfortunately. I think it'll take less than 5 years, but it could take 5 years. That is, look what happened to Penrith. They got memed on for the 5-year plan, Craig, and then it turned out that they won 4 premierships, maybe 5 in a row, depending on what happens this year, because they were willing to put in the hard work, both at first grade level and below. I'm hoping it'll take 5 years, but
let's zero in on 2027 for something significant to happen, as far as a team in the as far as aspirations are concerned. But I would want the team, in all seriousness, next season to be competing for finals football. And if we aren't competing for finals football next year, I will have an element of disappointment, because
I think the caveat there is Mitchell Moses' availability. But if Mitch plays the majority of the season, then yeah, absolutely. I think you're setting the line.
John, we could have that caveat this year that
if Mitch plays the majority of the year, how high do we go on the ladder? Because we talked about those games where 1, 2, 5% better being better meant a win. Mitchell Moses is that 5% and then some. Prince of PTC says, I feel it's more important and better for the club to continue and prioritise development of our juniors than having sugar hit external signings. I, by and large, agree with you, mate. I think that you do need to use free agency. You develop to create the core of your team, right? But then you use free agency to find the final piece. That's how I view the balance. Your lifeblood of a team is your development. It's your juniors. It's the guys you can find along the pathways, like Luca Moretti, who then become not a junior but junior adjacent, right, Craig? And then you go out there and you find your Zach Lomaxes and you find your, in this case, Tino Fa'asuamaleauis, not for the sugar hit of signing them and saying, wow, we got ourselves a cool marquee signing, but because they are the final piece to elevate the other parts of your roster. Because you can get lost in the sauce with the signing so quickly, can't you? And splashing out the cash and having fun and saying, yeah, we won the offseason because we signed this State of Origin rep and this rising star, and then they get here and it turns out they weren't as good as you thought. So I think that sort of common sense approach is how you maintain your success, absolutely.
John, even if we go back to the Eels' golden era, the signing of someone like Ray Price, even though he was a Parramatta boy, he was not a Parramatta Junior Rugby League transition pathways player, followed by the acquisition of Mick Cronin, set the Eels on a pathway which took further 5 years to achieve, but they did immediately have a grand final appearance in Ray Price's first season. Got that little bit closer with Mick Cronin joining in 77, and eventually the success came in 81 with the maturing of the juniors that were coming through the pathways. But they were two very significant external additions to the team, and then there was the scattering of others that was there for the rest of the team. So
the best, the biggest glamour clubs that sign all the stars still need a core of development. The biggest development clubs that have all the juniors like Penrith and Parramatta still need to augment at the top end with free agency. That is just a tale as old as time. But it's back to the timings and the balance right.
Even the clubs that are renowned as being out there and just buying players, and I'm talking about, say, the Roosters, for example, they pump a lot of money into their academies and recruit at a younger level. And there's a number of players that play in their first grade team that have pretty much only played for the Roosters or debuted for the Roosters at a young age and have gone on, even if their origins weren't as Roosters juniors, because there's not too many of those, they've actually been nurtured by that club. So at some stage you are recruiting from outside, and even in the Eels pathways at the moment, there's a lot of players that we've got that we've sourced from Queensland in particular and have brought into the Eels pathways systems. And look, the simple example of one that everyone is starting to become familiar with is Arpa Twiddle. So we got him from, he's originally from New Zealand, but we got him via Queensland. And he's a player that a lot of people are interested in seeing how he develops. Well, he come through our pathways, but he was recruited from Queensland. I think Matty Hunter, Queensland, isn't he?
I'm not sure about Matty Hunter. I have to have a poke around for that one. But, yeah, we've done a lot of work.
Will Latu.
Will Lewis. We've
Lewis,
done a lot of work in the Queensland catchment. There's been and not all of them have been hits. That's not how junior development and scouting works. But there are a number of players in the pathways right now that are working towards an eventual NRL debut. Like you said, Arpa at the head of the list. And if Matty is from Queensland, he's also in the mix too, because we had another question earlier about who else could be in the contest next year for the 5/8. If Matty Hunter's from Queensland, then he could be there too. But
if he's playing at the moment the 5/8 in New South Wales Cup, then you would say that he's in the mix because he's the captain of the Jersey Flag, and they've taken him out of Jersey Flag to play New South Wales Cup, and he's scoring tries.
So wins a Wolves Gallagher. There you go. So he's a Westie. Okay. So
is he?
Yeah, that might as well be in Queensland.
I had it in my head that they actually picked him up from Queensland. There was another Hunter,
Zach Hunter,
was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
who's still with
maybe
the
I've
club.
got that the wrong. Maybe I've got that the other way around because I think one was from Queensland, one was from Western Sydney.
Yes.
So anyway,
so that's something for us to try and follow up on next week. All right,
John. Topic.
Oh, you don't want to close out the show, didn't you? Yeah.
After tonight, I think a topic that would be a fun one is to identify all those musos that have been in bands over the years that are big Eels supporters. So we just picked up on Rayan. We've also had Sean Diviney.
Yeah, Sean Diviney. Yep.
From Short Stack, massive Eels fan, lives up the Central Coast, but he's a good friend of the Cumberland Throw. Who else have we had obviously the great John English over the years. What's the name of that Melbourne punk band? Got the girl lead singer. I think their drummer. No, there was a clip where their drummer was wearing an Eels jersey, so I just had in my head that he was a massive. Well, maybe not massive, but he's an Eels fan. Anyway, that'll be one. Maybe our people in chat can go digging, and we'll just have
Amy Taylor
list.
And the Sniffers. Is that?
Sorry,
the Sniffers. Is that who it is?
Yeah. Yes, Amel and the Sniffers.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think their drummer was.
It'd be Bryce Wilson, the drummer, wearing this shirt if that's the case. So.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe our chat
The
can
singer
help
from
us.
Peking Duck. There you go. So
Oh, of course, yes.
that's
Yeah,
Scott Whitney in chat
and there
with
was
the shout
another.
there.
There was another drummer
Eric
from
Grove, yes, Eric Grove, famous muso.
senior and junior.
Yep, good shout there.
Anyway,
chat.
that'll be a fun topic for
and
another week.
while we sign off, a couple of shout outs for my extra sporting curricular activities. Carl Ryley, the big dumper himself, winning the home run derby in the American Baseball All-Stars game today. Seattle Mariner, team that I support there. Much like Parramatta, not known for their success recently, but plucky underdogs as they were. But yeah, best nickname in baseball, the big dumper with the big booty. He cranked out the home runs today. And then the Aussie cricketers, Mitchell Stark, 6 for 9. Scotty Bowen, the Hattie. They rolled the Windies for 20-something. Crazy innings there. So some extracurricular sporting events, as it were, before we sign off with your final word, mate.
Scotty Boland always gets the job done whenever he comes into the team.
He might be the greatest, +1 bowler Australia's ever had, right? And just a victim of that formidable pace battery of Cummings, obviously Stark, and then Hazelwood ahead of him. But yeah, Bowen has never let the team down. So cool stuff.
Yep. So, John, thank you for tonight. Thank you to everyone that's been watching this, all the people that have jumped into chat, our sponsors, Star Partners, Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. We really appreciate Greg's support of us right from the start of the Cumberland Throw. Thank you to Paraleagues, the home of the Eels. Don't forget, 25th of July,
Yes.
the TCT watch party, 7 o'clock start in Sturlos. The food will come out about 7:30, so you're warned. The food will come out about 7:30. $5 beers, some giveaways. John and I jumping on the mic for a quick preview. We're still going to talk. John and I still got to work out how we might do the instant reaction straight afterwards, because we've been jumping on the house mics there rather than recording the instant reaction. But we'll have a bit of a chat about that, John, how we go with that. But really looking forward to having people come down there, and maybe as a little something that might help me along on the night, I'm going to ask people to have a drink for Mum. She loved her Canadian club, and maybe grab a Canadian club during the night as a bit of a shout out to Mum and the battles that she's going through, the big battle she's going through at the moment. So, yes, again, thank you everyone for being here. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.